Hey there, kiddos. In this video, we're going to discuss how to measure volume of a three-dimensional figure. And the three-dimensional figure that we're going to be dealing with is a rectangular prism. In this question, part A states that Adela is packing a box below with 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch cubes. So the length, the width, and the height of these cubes is going to be 1 inch. And the question is, what is the volume of the box? So when we take a look at this particular rectangular prism, it's 4 inches is the length, 2 inches is the width, and 3 inches is the height. Now, when it comes to area, we see that to measure area, it's length or our base times the height. Whereas with volume, it's going to be whatever the length is or whatever our base is times whatever the width is times the height. And that's going to let us know what's the total number of units that can fit inside of this particular rectangular prism. So we're going to multiply 4 times 2 times 3. And that's going to be our volume. And because we're dealing with a box that is 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch, we're going to see that, hey, because the units are the same, whatever we multiply by is going to be inches to the third power, or inches cubed, because we're dealing with 3 units here. So 4 times 2 is 8. So let's use a different color. 4 times 2 is 8. And 8 times 3 would be equal to 24. So the volume for this particular rectangular prism would be 24 inches cubed. Or 24, inches cubed, or cubic inches. Now part B says that Adela has a second box that's the same size as the first box that she wants to pack with the same cubes. But this time, she's going to be using 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch cubes. Will the number of cubes she packs in the box be the same volume as before? Why or why not? Well, to answer this question, when we think about this question, well, the units are not the same. We first saw in the first question that the units were 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. And now it's changed to 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And so the number of units is not going to be the same. And the reason why is because when we multiply 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, that's equal to 1/8. So 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 gives us 1/8. So the number of cubes would not be the same. So they would not have the same volume. So what's important to notice here, or what is the key point here, is that we want to make sure that the number of unit cubes with an edge length of 1 that's packed into a solid, that's going to give us the volume. And the number of unit cubes packed in a solid is not always going to give you the same volume. So what does that look like as our key point? Here it is. So our volume of a solid can be determined by multiplying our base times the width times the height. Let's take a look at a practice question. So I think about a question here says, using the solid from part B, how many 1/2 inch unit cubes are needed to pack the solid? And how can we use the 1/2 inch unit cubes that pack the solid to find the volume? Well, when we take a look at this, we can figure out the number of 1/2 unit inch cubes that go across the length and the width. So if we were just to find the area of the bottom section, so if we're multiplying the base times the width, we want to figure out that. And well, 1/2 inch goes into 4 inches 8 times. So 1/2 an inch would go into our 4 inches here 8 times. And 1/2 an inch would go into 2 inches 4 times. That means the total number of 1/2 inch cubes that would be able to fit on this bottom layer would be equal to 32. And then the number of 1/2 inches that would go into the 3 inches here would be equal to 6. So if we multiply 32 times 6, that gives us a total of 192 unit cubes, or 1/2 inch unit cubes, that would fit this particular rectangular prism. So the formula that we're using once again is base times width times height, but ensuring that the units that we have in our question, that we're taking consideration of how that fits into whatever our model looks like. So one more time, multiplying when we're finding a volume, the formula that we want to use to find volume is base times width times height. And for this particular question, it'd be 192 unit cubes to fill this particular rectangular prism. Let's take a look at example number 1, where it says measure the volume of the solid below by packing it with unit cubes with a side length of 1/4 of a foot. So once again, let's write our formula out. Volume is equal to base times width times height. So the number of a quarter of a foot would be, for this 1.5 inches, that would fit 6 times, because 1 inch would be 4, and so this would be a 1/2 of an inch would be equal to 2, and so a total of 6 quarters would make the 1.5 inches, and this actually should be feet as well. I shouldn't say inches. Similarly here, a quarter of a foot, this would equal 6 times, and then the 2 inches, or rather the 2 feet, that should say, that would be equal to 8 quarters. And so to find our volume, 6 times 6 times 8, 6 times 6 gives us 36, 36 times 8 gives us a total of 288, and the units here should be feet squared. Great. Now let's practice this with your partners.